Burkina Faso has been hit by a second military coup in 8 months as the country struggles for stability as it's been ravaged by terror attacks and poverty. The takeover on Friday has been followed by protests outside the embassy of France, the former colonial power, and some support from Russia, which has provided mercenaries to the government. But they have been accused of brutal attacks that have included civilian casualties. Africa 54 host Esther Githui-Erwad asks reporter Henry Wilkins how the scene looks in the Burkinabe capital, Ouagadougou.
Yes, so it's a lot calmer today compared to the scenes over the weekend. Although on Friday night the junta took to the national television station to announce their coup. The coup didn't really feel complete until really yesterday evening. On Saturday there were troops out on the streets, apparently expecting a retaliation from the now ousted president Damiba. There were helicopters circling overhead, which the new junta leader Traoré, as she said, weren't under his control, but were under the control of Damiba. So really throughout the weekend there was this sense that there could be infighting between the two factions within the army. It's really only on Sunday afternoon that we heard that the former president Damiba had resigned. He's now said to be in Togo. Also on Sunday, we saw attacks on the French embassy as well.
The military leader Sandaogo took a military helicopter to Togo. Had he already planned his exit, or was he aided by those who ousted him?
It's likely that he was aided by those who ousted them. One of the conditions of his resignation, as far as we were told, was that he would enjoy the protection of the new military junta, as would the soldiers who had supported him. So it is likely that he was assisted in leaving the country. Sure.
You mentioned the French embassy in Ouagadougou. Is it functioning since you say that there were protesters outside of the embassy?
Yeah, we don't know. The French embassy's comms team have been very quiet over the weekend, perhaps understandably so. I think they do not want to be seen to be getting involved in this coup. We don't know whether staff have returned to work yet. Certainly there was some damage to the walls and the exterior of the embassy over the weekend. So I would imagine that probably many of the embassy workers are working from home.
Henry, thanks. Henry Wilkins reporting live from Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso.
Somalia's long-running battle against the extremist group Al-Shabaab has led to 3 car bombings today that killed at least 20 people and wounded 36 others. Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for the attacks in the central Somali town of Beledweyne, which has been the center of a recent local community mobilization against the Islamic militant group. Joining me now in the studio is Harun Maruf of VOA Somali Service. Tell us about the massive explosions in Beledweyne town today and why Beledweyne in the first place.
Why Beledweyne? Probably Beledweyne, as you mentioned, it has been the center of locally mobilized resistance to Al-Shabaab. The Somali government, with the support of African Union forces, have been trying to subjugate and degrade Al-Shabaab for many years. But the support from locals was not forthcoming all the time because people did not have entirely trust in the government. For instance, if they reported Al-Shabaab, they were fearing repercussions from Al-Shabaab. And the government force and African Union forces were going to the countryside and occupying and liberating areas, but they were not staying in these areas. So that was compromising if the locals were to support the government. That has appears to have changed last month when local forces, clan militias, mobilized themselves and supported the government in liberating more than 40 villages. And they have pushed Al-Shabaab from vast areas. It was expected Al-Shabaab was going to retaliate. Al-Shabaab spokesman Ali Dere directly threatened clans that Al-Shabaab is going to attack them. So it was expected that they were going to attack, and this was the result. They carried out 3 massive attacks, specifically targeting where the officials and the local government service workers are based. And they killed a number of people, including a regional minister, a deputy governor, and a number of other civilians.
The Somali government has announced the killing of a prominent Al-Shabaab leader. Who is this official?
This official's name is Abdullahi Nadir. He's also known as Abdullahi Yere. He's one of the co-founders of Al-Shabaab. He's a veteran jihadist. There were rumors, unconfirmed reports that he was also the link between Al-Shabaab and Boko Haram. That was never substantiated, but it indicates he had some external experience as well. Abdullahi Yere has held multiple posts within the organization. He was the head of finance, the head of Da'wah. Da'wah means preaching and spreading Al-Shabaab's ideology in Somalia. He was also the head of the media department. One of Al-Shabaab's most savvy departments is the media, and they produce these highly sophisticated videos that attract youngsters into the group. So he was one of the original people to head this department. So he's very well known.
Does that give the government a little leg room to operate, and it's a massive blow to Al-Shabaab, if you may?
That's a very interesting question. The United States and Somali government have been targeting Al-Shabaab leaders for a long time, more than 10 years. The former leader of Al-Shabaab, Ahmed Abdi Godana, was killed. A number of other high-profile individuals were killed along the way. But Al-Shabaab has been very resilient, and they were able to replace all these key leaders. The question is there going to be a sustained military operations Al-Shabaab? Because when you pressure Al-Shabaab, they withdraw.
Now, before we go, Harun, what are officials of the government saying about the strategy they've launched against Al-Shabaab, and will this strategy be successful and sustainable?
Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, the new president of Somalia, came up with this new strategy. He said, previously we have been focusing on degrading Al-Shabaab and containing them within Somalia. So he came up with other dimensions to face Al-Shabaab: ideological approach, economical approach, social approach. He said he's going to mobilize community leaders, Muslim scholars, and also the business community, so that they can stop paying Al-Shabaab, because a lot of businesses are paying Al-Shabaab because they're scared Al-Shabaab is going to blow up their businesses. So Hassan Sheikh Mohamud, just yesterday, he was saying, if you stop paying Al-Shabaab, they will not be able to maintain and finance their explosives. So this new strategy, Hassan Sheikh Mohamud has been very lucky. Previously, he was a president. He was not getting a lot of support from the clans. Now it appears the clans and local people are supporting him. The question is he going to capitalize, and is he going to put the pressure that's required in putting Al-Shabaab so that Al-Shabaab can leave the countryside? Al-Shabaab lost most of the major towns in Somalia, but they have been controlling and running around in the countryside. So that is the question, whether he can minimize the threat and also make the best of the international community support, including the United States, which, by the way, a few minutes ago confirmed that an Al-Shabaab leader has been killed in southern Somalia, although they did not name, but the government named it that to be Abdullah Yere.
Thank you very much. That was Harun Maruf of VOA Somali Service. A Tanzanian medic who contracted and died of Ebola in Uganda has been buried. The health worker is one of the 6 who contracted the disease last week. Medics are reportedly fearful of treating patients in Mubenda Regional Referral Hospital in central Uganda, while some with Ebola symptoms are said to be hiding in their homes. Catherine Nambi reports from Kampala.
Dr. Muhammad Ali, who was earning a master's degree at Uganda's Kampala International University, lost the battle with Ebola on Saturday. Dr. Ali is among the medics who contracted the disease after performing surgery on an undiagnosed Ebola victim. Under normal circumstances, the body would have been repatriated to Tanzania for burial. However, his remains have been laid to rest at a cemetery near Fort Portal Regional Referral Hospital in western Uganda, where he has been receiving treatment since Wednesday. Epidemiologist Dr. Paul Stephen Ayala says it would have been costly and highly risky to transport the body to Tanzania.
If they are to take the body home, then the Ministry of Health has to assign a team. They have to get a separate transport which will not be in contact with people, typically like a chartered flight, but really ensure they observe, they put the body in a bag, and then there is no contact. So, here we have the safe and dignified burial team. If they take like to Tanzania, you may find that because they don't have Ebola, they have no experience with that.
Dr. Ali is the first medic to die during the current Ebola outbreak in Uganda. One other medic among the 6 currently hospitalized is said to be in critical condition. The situation has reportedly thrown medics into panic, with some health workers refusing to touch any patient. Other interns have requested transfers or have been home. The Uganda Medical Association is, however, advising the medics to stay in Mubende until the disease is declared over to avoid infecting others in the communities they go to. Dr. Samuel Oledo is the president of the Uganda Medical Association. He has also advised medics to ensure they go for Ebola testing once they detect any Ebola-like symptom.
Remember, the incubation period is 2 to 21 days. So there are great chances probably the disease or the virus is multiplying in your body system. So it will hit you with clinical symptoms when you're home and you become highly infectious for your family members. So stay for the next 1 month in Mubende. Those who have already traveled, please come back before the clinical symptoms are manifested. Let us check you. If you're positive, we isolate you. We treat you as early as possible. All health workers who are starting showing clinical symptoms and are in hiding, please, if you hide, Ebola will take you and the entire family you're hiding with.
Dr. Oledo is also challenging the Ministry of Health to ensure hospitals have adequate personal protective equipment or PPE and train health workers on proper handling of Ebola patients.
Let all medical interns be trained in Ebola infection control and prevention, and let all medical interns be provided with PPEs. We are also asking Ministry of Health to take stock of the availability of PPEs in the various hospitals, starting with those that are near the Mubende belt.
He is also calling for a reduction in the working hours of medics and for more medics in Ebola hotspot districts as a way of avoiding infections that may result from fatigue.
If someone can be there for 3 or 4 hours, it is important as another colleague comes to replace them. One cannot work day and another one works evening. Let one work half day. Because being so much tired, the brain sometimes doesn't subconsciously work. And what we are talking about is donning and doffing. Putting on is donning of PPEs. Okay, and these PPEs, when you put them on now and touching patients, they're highly infectious when you have contact directly on them. So in the process of doffing, that is removing them, there are chances someone who is very tired can easily cause self-infection.
Uganda is battling Ebola for the 3rd week now. The disease, which was first reported in Mubende district on 20th September, has now spread to 3 other neighboring districts. They include Kagadi, Chegegwa, and Kasanda. This is Catherine Nambi for VOA News in Kampala.
Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan has cautioned critics inside her government against overstepping their authority. The French news agency AFP says she made the statement today after swearing in 3 ministers a day after shaking up her cabinet for the 3rd time this year. She told party members serving in her government that, quote, once we agree on something, you are part of it. You need to know the scope of your power so that when you want to go beyond, you seek permission from higher authorities. The news service says the cabinet reshuffle points to a breach of trust in the upper echelons of government, which is ruled by the Chama cha Mapinduzi Party, or CCM. Nigeria's National Drug Law Enforcement Agency says it seized nearly 13.5 million pills of the opiate tramadol with an estimated street value of $18.5 million in the 3rd major drug bust in the last 2 weeks in West Africa. The tramadol was found in the house of a Nigerian billionaire in the Lekki area of Lagos on September 30. The billionaire has been arrested. 2 weeks ago, the agency seized 1.8 tons of raw cocaine in Lagos with street value of $270 million. Meanwhile, Liberian authorities say they seized $100 million of cocaine Saturday. Femi Babafemi is the Director, Media and Advocacy of the Nigerian Drug Enforcement Agency. Babafemi spoke to reporter Mike Mbonye about the seizure.
The actual billionaire drug baron behind this tramadol consignment has been on the agency's watch list for some time now. But then our trail of him led us to his residence in VGC, that's the highbrow Victoria Garden City area of Lekki in Lagos, at the weekend, precisely on Friday, when we had there was an incident around in the estate, and our men moved in and were able to, in a palatial home, discover that the mansion was not actually occupied by any human being, but instead it's being used to warehouse millions of tramadol pills.
What has been the fate of the drugs seized by the agency from the billionaire's mansion?
Well, definitely all of that, that is, they were actually packed in, the total pills is over 30 million pills, and they were packed in 443 cartons. They've all been moved out of the house to our facility, in addition to some of the exotic vehicles discovered in the billionaires' houses within the estate. At least so far, we've identified about 5 exotic vehicles, including a bulletproof sports utility vehicle, that's SUV, all of which at least 2 of those vehicles had already been moved as a.
Is the NDLA on the trail of other drug kingpins like this who specialize in warehousing and selling tramadol and other hard drugs?
Yeah, definitely. That if you have a copy of our statement, the chairman of the agency, General Amhara, indeed stated that we'll continue to be on their trail, as many of them that will not back out of the illicit business, and definitely what that means, we would get them, because we are more than ever before determined to get on their back and ensure that we'll take them out of circulation through proper investigation, arrest, and prosecution.
That was Femi Babafemi, spokesperson of Nigeria Drug Law Enforcement Agency, speaking from Abuja with reporter Mike Mbonye. A report by the UN Human Rights Office finds systemic racism against people of African descent is deep-rooted. Urgent measures are needed to dismantle discriminatory systems. Lisa Schlein reports for VOA from Geneva.
It took the death of a 46-year-old black man, George Floyd, by a police officer in the United States in May 2020 to draw global attention to the problem of systemic racism. There was a huge groundswell of global support in the immediate aftermath of the event, which has since largely fizzled out. The United Nations reports some countries have taken steps to address racism, but those, for the most part, are piecemeal. They fall short of what is needed to dismantle the entrenched societal racism that has existed for centuries. UN Human Rights spokeswoman Ravina Shamdasani says people of African descent in many countries have less access to health, food, and education, and often are victims of enforced disappearance and violence. She says the UN report finds African migrants and migrants of African descent are victims of excessive use of force and deaths by law enforcement officials. She says they are subject to punitive drug policies, arrests, and are overly represented in prisons.
Where available, the data continues to point to disproportionately high rates of deaths of people of African descent by law enforcement in different countries. And families of African descent continue to report immense challenges, barriers, and protracted processes that they face in their pursuit of truth and justice for the deaths of their relatives.
The report focuses in detail on 7 cases of police-related fatalities of people of African descent. They include the cases of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, an African-American medical worker shot and killed by police officers in March 2020. Shamdasani says their families are still seeking justice, as are the families of 5 other people of African descent killed by police agents in France, Brazil, the United Kingdom, and Colombia.
A year later, the report states that while there has been some progress towards accountability in some of these emblematic cases, unfortunately, not a single case has yet been brought to a full conclusion.
Shamdasani says the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights has been mandated by the UN Human Rights Council to follow the issue. She says the office will be producing annual reports on progress and on new violations that come to light. Lisa Schlein for VOA News, Geneva.
Reuters says a maritime service near the Canary Island off the coast of Morocco has rescued a survivor from a dinghy that left land with 34 people on board. The Spanish NGO Caminando Fronteras said a cargo vessel picked up an exhausted 27-year-old man suffering from hypothermia alongside the bodies of 3 other migrants. The remains of the other 29 victims, all of whom had left from south of Layun in Western Sahara, have not been found. The inflatable dinghy was found 240 kilometers southwest of Gran Canary Island, the 3rd largest island of the archipelago, about 150 kilometers off the northwestern coast of Africa. The Newswire says during the first 6 months of this year, over 9,300 people reached the Canary Island from Western Sahara, a 27% increase over the same period last year. And that wraps up this edition of African News Tonight. I'm Peter Cloty in Washington. For all latest development on the continent 24/7, visit our website at voaafrica.com.